Welcome everybody to TechCraft, this is Rob, and in today's video I'll be talking about a mobile setup for the Raspberry Pi that works with any tablet or laptop. Let's go. So a few weeks ago I published a video showing my Raspberry Pi and iPad Pro setup where I had the two devices communicating with each other over the USB-C connection, and I had the iPad powering the Raspberry Pi over that same USB-C connection. Now this is a great solution, but it obviously has limitations. It only works with USB-C devices, and even then, not all USB-C devices would work. I have a Galaxy Tab S4, I think it is, that I couldn't get that to work with the Pi. Obviously, because the iPad is powering the Raspberry Pi over its single USB-C connection, you can't charge the iPad at the same time, which is a big limitation. And the whole interface for managing the Wi-Fi connection of the Raspberry Pi to the internet was really messy, required command line experience, and just was not very satisfying. So today what I want to do is show you a solution that I think solves all these problems. We're going to connect the Pi and the Pad together over Wi-Fi. We're going to make sure that the Pi can still connect to the internet via a Wi-Fi connection and provide a nice user interface for that through the web browser. And because we're not using the USB-C sockets, both devices can be powered separately from a wall socket or a battery. So I really want this video to work for both beginners and advanced users. So I am going to run through the whole process step by step from the beginning, but I will put timestamps in the description below. If you're an advanced user, then you can skip ahead to the section that's most relevant for you. Let's get started by taking a look at what gear you'll need for this setup and for the actual process of installation. So the first thing you'll need is a computer. You need some kind of MacBook or Windows or Linux computer just to do the initial setup stages. Then you'll need your tablet or mobile phone or whatever you plan to use with the actual Pi when you're traveling. So I'll be using my iPad Pro Gen 3 for that. I did test with the Gen 2 iPad Pro and also with my MacBook for everything. So I'm pretty sure this will work with any device that has a Wi-Fi connection. You'll also need to get hold of a Raspberry Pi, and I'm going to use this, which is the Model 4. I did test this with the Model 3 as well, and it worked just fine. I don't have a working Model 2 to test this with, so if anyone does get this working with that, please throw a comment below, because I'm sure there are plenty of people who would be interested. You'll also need some sort of memory card. I'm going to use this 16GB SanDisk micro SD. The size is really not important, but I would consider 16 gig to be the smallest size. We're going to install a fresh copy of the operating system and then install everything we need on top of that. You need a way to power your Raspberry Pi, and I'm going to use this Zenjaw Slim 10000 battery. Because this is meant to be a mobile setup, I wanted to show it working with a battery. So I did actually review these batteries just a few days ago and made a huge error in not checking with the manufacturer about their pricing, and the prices sadly went up the day I released the video. Zenjaw, being very kind, have sent me one of these Slim 10000 batteries and one of their larger A6 PD batteries for a giveaway. So please comment below if you'd like to be entered in the giveaway. I'll pick a random comment for each battery in the next 2 weeks, and then I will ship that out just after the new year. And then the final thing you'll need is an Ethernet cable, because we're going to plug the Raspberry Pi into our router for the setup process. Now, you can do this entirely wirelessly. It's super error prone and super painful. So I recommend just for the few minutes it takes to do the setup, plugging into your router and going from there. Right, I'm going to switch over to my computer, we'll do the installation process, and then we'll get everything set up. Okay, so here I am at my desk, and the first thing I want to do is install a copy of Raspbian on the Raspberry Pi. We're going to set it up so that we can access the Pi over SSH once it's installed. That will be everything we need the computer for. If you want to continue the installation process on your computer, you absolutely can do. But because I do this on my iPad mostly, I'll switch over to the iPad once this bit is done. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is burn the operating system image to our SD card. And I'm going to use this app, which is called Balena Etcher. And because I want to do something to the SD card after it's burned, I want to make sure that in preferences, that this option, Auto Run Mount and Success, is deselected. I want the finished drive to stay mounted on my Mac. So click back. And I'm going to drag the operating system image here into this piece. I'll put a link to this in the description. Then we're ready to just click flash. You'll need your password on the Mac. I'm not quite sure if this is the case on the Windows version. And then it takes maybe 2 or 3 minutes to do the burn and about another 2 or 3 minutes to do the verification. Okay, great. Once the flash finishes, you can close down Balena. Notice that the boot volume has stayed attached to the Mac, which is great, and we can do our final step. Now what we need to do is add a blank file into this called SSH, and the easiest way to do that is to open up a terminal window here and then just type touch /volumes/boot/ssh, and this will put that blank file there for you. On Windows, you can probably just do this from the File Explorer pretty easily, or with Notepad or something. Okay, that's everything. So I'm going to eject this now, and then I'm going to plug this into the Pi and boot it up. So I've got the Pi plugged into my Ethernet cable now, that rather garish yellow one there, and I've got it plugged into the battery for power, and obviously the SD card is inside it as well. And we're now basically ready to go with the rest of the setup. Okay, so I'm on my iPad now, and the first thing we need to do is find out what IP address has been given to the Raspberry Pi so we can connect to it. Now, how you do this will differ for your particular network setup, but I'm using this Unify thing here, so I'm going to switch into my control panel here and find out the IP address. So it's this device here, I think, because I know that this one is something else, and I've been given the 192.168.1.203 IP address. Yours may be different, in fact probably is different. Now at some point during the installation process, this IP address will change, so maybe just keep a record of the MAC address, which will not change, and then if we get lost you can find the device again. I'm going to switch over to Blink, which is the SSH client I use on the Mac, and I'm going to connect with SSH Pi being the default username at, and then the IP address for your particular device. 123. You'll need to accept the key and write that key to disk. The default password is Raspberry, and then we're in. First thing I want to do is update the Pi so it's got all the latest software on there before we worry about installing the particular software we're going to use for the Wi-Fi hotspot. So sudo apt update will update the known universe of all packages. So once the update completes, we're just going to do sudo apt full-upgrade to upgrade all software and all system software. This will take a few minutes, so by the power of editing, I will fast forward us. Okay, so there's the update complete. What we're going to do now is install a piece of software called RaspAp, which is an open source utility that manages the Wi-Fi connections on the Pi and gives you a really nice web-based user interface for it. So we can find the RaspAp homepage here at raspap.conf, and I just want to point out this page in particular because the installation instructions are on here, and also a link to the FAQ in case you reach any problems. Now I'm going to copy all of this content into the description, but just in case you get lost and you want to come look at it yourself, this is the quick installer. I'm going to copy that. We're going to go back into Blink. We'll paste that in here and run that. Now we're going to get prompted to answer a bunch of questions, and we'll say yes to every question apart from one, which is, do you want to install OpenVPN? If you're an advanced user, feel free to install the OpenVPN support, but it doesn't really contribute to what I'm showing here, and probably a bit more hassle than it's worth if you are a beginner. So I'm going to press no to that. Okay, so now it will say that the system needs to be rebooted. Don't do this just yet, and the reason is, if you just take a peek here, there was an error, permission denied when looking at this file. This has caused some stray text to be inserted into that file that we definitely don't want there. So I'm going to press no to the reboot, and we're going to use a piece of software called Nano, which is a little text editor, to just remove the stray file from this etc/wa supplicant.conf file. And it's this line here, so let me find my delete key, get rid of that, and okay, that looks fine, and it's Control-O to write that file to disk, followed by Enter, and then Control-X to exit that. And if you want to double check, sudo cat, so we sudo first do this as a super user, and then the file path again, we'll write out the contents to the console here, and we can see that line is gone. Perfect, now we can do a reboot with the sudo reboot command. Once your Raspberry Pi reboots, you can come into Safari and you can put into the address bar http:// and then the IP address, and this will bring up the RaspApp control panel. The default username is admin and the default password is secret. And there we go, we're in. So we're not quite there yet. This is presenting a hotspot that the iPad can connect to, but the Raspberry Pi is not yet connecting to Wi-Fi as a client. So it's not getting an internet connection. It's not providing onwards connectivity for the iPad. Let's fix that. So to do this, we're going to come here, and we're going to go into configure Wi-Fi client, and we are going to do a Wi-Fi scan to see if we can see any nearby networks, and we'll do that by pressing rescan. Later on, when everything's running, this is the interface you will use to connect your Raspberry Pi to a Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or whatever. Now it doesn't work, and the reason why it doesn't work is something went wrong during the installation. Can't quite figure out why it's going wrong, but I can at least fix it, and we can do that by coming here and scrolling until we find the link to the FAQ. So this is back on the RaspApp homepage. And I show you this because I want you to know where the FAQ is. I will put the actual fix in the description. Scroll down and it says, hey, Wi-Fi scanning doesn't work, help. And the reason is we need to run this special command here. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to go back into Blink, reconnect over SSH to my Pi. With the right password, and just paste that command in. And there we go, successfully initialized WPA supplicant. Remember earlier I said if you did this over Wi-Fi, it wouldn't work very well. This is where everything goes wrong if you don't have the wired connection. At this point, everything goes screwy and it's really hard to recover. So I do recommend sticking with the wired connection during the setup process. So back in the RaspAp dashboard now, I can rescan here and this will now work. And now I'll just go ahead and connect to one of my Wi-Fi networks. Okay, great. And you can see the status check mark there, and we can actually come to the dashboard and see that we are connected to that Wi-Fi network. This is brilliant. So now the Raspberry Pi is connected to the Wi-Fi as a client, and it has the hotspot, but the two are not working together. We need to fix that. You can almost do this directly within RaspApp, but there are two little niggles that we'll need to do via SSH. So to configure the hotspot, what I'm going to do is come into this configure hotspot menu item here, go into advanced, and then make sure that I've checked this option here, Wi-Fi client AP mode. This just makes sure that I can be a Wi-Fi client and an access point on my Pi at the same time. Now, this is where things get a little bit funny. I'm going to press stop hotspot, but what's going to happen is it's going to lose its LAN IP address. We need to find the new one and reconnect, and then there's one final little niggle that we have to fix before we can get this tested. So as I attempt to restart the hotspot now, it just stalls, and this is because the LAN IP address has been changed in the background. So we can just leave this running, and what we're going to do is go back into whatever control panel you're using for your network to find out what IP address you've got. And you can see here that my IP address has been changed to 192.168.1.206 from 203 that it was before. So that's okay. I can come back in here and change this to 206 so that we get the right control panel. You'll need to log in yet again. And now we've lost Wi-Fi connection and we've lost everything basically, but that's fine. We just need to make one little change. So I'm going to come into Blink. If you left your previous Blink window connected, it will not work because the IP address changed, so just exit out of that. And I'm going to SSH back in, this time on the new IP address, which is 192.168.1.206. Get the dot in there. Password doesn't change. Okay, we're in. We just need to make one change. I want to just show you the contents of a file, which is this etc dnsmasq.conf. If this does not update and does not look like this, does not look like 192.168.50.50, blah, 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 and still has an IP address that looks like 10 dot something, you need to replace the line that you have with the line that you see here, and I will make sure I put this in the description. This goes wrong for me about 1 in 2 times that I try this out, so just be aware of that. All we're going to do is do a reboot now. So after the Raspberry Pi reboots, come back into RaspApp, go into the dashboard, and you should see everything is working just fine. You do have to do that reboot that we just did, and you do have to check that the dnsmasq.conf is right. It does go wrong on occasion, so you do need to make sure you check that before you do the reboot. So now all that remains is to actually check that this is working, because we are still connected over a wired connection to the Raspberry Pi, and my iPad is still connected to my home Wi-Fi. So I'm going to tweak those two things. First things first, I'm going to unplug the wired connection from my Raspberry Pi. Okay, that's cool. Now I want to connect to the actual Raspberry Pi hotspot itself, and we can do that by going into settings. Note that I've got mobile data turned off, which means that the iPad will not get any internet connectivity from the mobile data or from 4G. It has to get it from its Wi-Fi connection. The default SSID for your Raspberry Pi access point is this RaspPi-Web GUI. You can change that in a second. And the default password will be change.me, capital C, capital M, and I've already entered that in a previous incarnation of this, but you can change that also. We'll come back to Safari, and we just need to change this IP address one more time. Okay, that's fine. We know. Once you're connected over Wi-Fi, once all the setup is done, the actual fixed IP address for the RaspApp is going to be this 192.168.50.1. Admin secret again. Okay, we're in, and I'm going to test it by going to raspberrypi.org. And there we go, brilliant. I've got internet connectivity from my iPad over Wi-Fi through the Raspberry Pi as an access point, and I'm able to communicate with the Raspberry Pi as well. And let's just see that by going back to Blink and SSHing into the fixed IP address of the Pi, which is 192.168.50.1. Do the whole thing again. You'd think with the number of times I type the word raspberry, I'd be able to do it. And there we are, we're in. So before we call this complete, I just want to make a few more changes. So the first thing is, I would almost certainly come in here, back into the RaspAp config, and change the authentication details. So the default username is fine, but definitely set a new password. And also in the hotspot, make sure that you come into security and change the password. If you see a few of these Raspberry Pi SSIDs floating around, you'll know that the default password is change me, so it makes perfect sense to change that. Other than that though, the settings are pretty good out of the box. So that's pretty much all there is to setting up Raspberry Pi as an access point for your tablet or your laptop or your mobile phone, but also setting it up so it can access a Wi-Fi at a coffee shop or at home or whatever. Now, obviously the installation is a little bit messy there, and I'll be sure to write down all the little tweaks you need to make to the config files in the description below, and I'll provide a link to the FAQ for RaspApp as well. Don't forget that if you are looking for a battery to power your Raspberry Pi, then Zenjo have kindly donated a free Slim 10000 and a A6PD, so comment below and I'll pick the winner in 2 weeks and ship those out after the Christmas break. Do also let me know in the comments below if you want to see more Raspberry Pi content, more iPad content. I do have some videos coming up about home automation with the Pi and the iPad. So please hit like, please hit subscribe, and don't just hit subscribe, but hit the bell as well so you don't miss out on that future content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.